I want to take you a little bit deeper into the concept of discernment. And I want to point out a few things up front that are likely going to defy the belief systems that Christian-minded or oriented people have. That discernment is something that you pray to God for, or Jesus, or your angels, or your guides, or whatever fucking thing it is that people believe, and that somehow they will be able to grant you this magical ability to discern, interpret reality, the intentions of someone, and the actual unfoldings and all that other stuff. Think of what it is that discernment is defined as. In many cases, discernment is a form of judgment. But what most people don't realize, and it's not because they're dumb or anything, it's just most of us never think about these things. What most people don't realize is that you are never going to be able to discern beyond the level of knowledge that you possess. You're not going to be able to see beyond, generally speaking, more than generally, to a substantive proportion of experience. You're not going to be able to see and interpret X, Y, or Z beyond the level of knowledge that you have regarding a certain thing. And to the degree that you do not know about a certain thing, you have to depend on others. And if they're deceptive, if they have ill intentions, right there is a place where you can then begin to be deceived because you couldn't discern, because you didn't have the knowledge that granted you the ability to interpret, in some cases, objective reality. In other cases, it's the deceptive ways in which people operate. Quote unquote, God is not going to give you that. You have to work for it the same way you have to work for knowledge. When you work for the knowledge and you have, of your own accords, built for yourself a foundation of knowledge, you then start to begin to see how that foundation of knowledge that you've been given, quote unquote, grants you or gives you the eyes to see that which you did not prior to working to obtain those foundations of knowledge that you worked for. A perfect case in point. For me, I listened to Mark Passio for a decade before I could actually identify that he's a gatekeeper, because I did not have the foundation of knowledge relevant to Jews, relevant to communism, and relevant to the cluster B spectrum. Just didn't have that foundation of knowledge. And through circumstances beyond my control, I was, in certain respects, forced. If I didn't learn about these subject matters, I was going to go out of my mind, specifically the cluster B spectrum. And that opened the lid on a whole lot of understanding once I started to obtain the knowledge and spent enough months and even years learning, researching to come to better understand. And then when I looked back, for instance, at relationship that I've had, when I looked back, for instance, at childhood, all of a sudden, because I now had the knowledge and the understanding, I was able to identify narcissists and that type of stuff. And it really shifted my entire perspective on my life script. Well, once I had that ability to interpret and see and recognize, to the degree that the education that I got, plus my own experiences, gave me the ability to see this stuff, I was then able to identify and interpret an awful lot more other people and their behaviors. Now, it wasn't until I went down the rabbit holes of Jews and communism that I got other foundations of knowledge that I never had. And never realizing that with these three new, pores, if you will, of concrete into the foundation of my belief system, not my belief system, my knowledge base of Jews, communism, and the cluster B spectrum, narcissism, that after I had done that, all of a sudden, unbeknownst to me, one day, I just started listening to a Passio video. And it started to hit me. Wait a minute. It started to occur to me, a Satanist couldn't not know about Jews, especially one who had been in the craft or the priesthood for a decade. There's no fucking way he couldn't know. I didn't know that about that guy because I didn't know about Jews for the 10 years prior when I was listening to all of his stuff. I still follow the guy's content when he puts it out, but I look at him with a very different eye. The same way you might look at Crowley. He's an evil prick. However, isn't it strange how such an evil prick did put out a lot of really good information that if you are practicing in the magical arts, you can learn a lot from that guy in some contexts, or many, most. It's to do as he says because he taught rather than what he did. This prick did all kinds of evil shit to learn what he learned, and the information actually turned out to be valuable, and you don't have to use it the way that he did. Does that make sense? Only some may see what I'm saying there. Well, with Passio, a very similar thing. You recognize who and what the fucking guy is, for those that can. And you still realize, even though he's that, he has still put out a lot of really good information. And I guess I'm just using him as an example to show you that I, for 10 years, had no idea motherfucker was a gatekeeper, closet Satanist, and all this other shit. Then I learned about Jews, communism, and the cluster B spectrum, and all of a sudden, every fucking time I began to watch and look and listen to that guy, I started to see bits and pieces, traces, and it started to make sense. I'm like, holy fuck, this guy, this fucking guy. See, Alex Jones was easy to fucking figure out because he just gave me that weird, disgusting feeling in my gut with all of his sensationalism and all that other shit. And that was back in 2010, 2011. I didn't know about Jews at that time. I was just repulsed at his sensationalism. But I digress. I'm really explaining that to explain to you that the work that I, for instance, put in that context to learn about Jews, communism, and fucking the cluster B spectrum, all of a sudden then gave me a new set of quote-unquote glasses through which to look. And then I was able to recognize that guy. And isn't it strange? That video has been out on BitChute, on Odyssey, and I've even got it on YouTube for the past 8 months or so, give or take. I forget. I'd have to look. And I haven't had any of his followers or anybody else come at me and say, you know what, I'm going to disprove that. And I'm willing to deal with anybody that can or wants to disprove me with anything that I've put out there. If they're normal, respectful people, like if I'm fucking wrong, I'm okay with it. And I would really appreciate it if somebody would point out where I'm wrong, because well, I didn't know, and explain it. And if you're not a dick about it, I'm like, oh shit, you're right. Fuck, I am wrong. And then I would go through and say, hey, I was wrong. I had this wrong. Here's what's right. That's just how I am. I'm not out there trying to deceive people or fucking lie to people or misdirect or any of that other shit. So back to the point of discernment. Discernment is something that you must work for. No, let me rephrase that. Yeah, it's true. That is true. But let me rephrase what I was trying to get at. Discernment is something that is going to be a byproduct, a manifestation, a positive consequence of your efforts to obtain your own foundations of knowledge. I didn't realize that until I put it together after I was working to obtain the foundations of knowledge, because I wanted to understand who the fuck these Jews were. I wanted to understand what communism was and the shit trail that it had left across the fucking world as it rolled across the world. Then I made the correlation to the Jew and the communism, and then I was all of a sudden it began to make me understand a whole lot more. And when I went down the rabbit hole of the cluster B spectrum, it's been a long time. I went down that rabbit hole several times, learned, listened, observed, correlated my own experiences, and started to look back at the patterns of relationships in my life. And I was like, holy fuck, my life has been plagued with these people, and I did not have the knowledge to understand. So I'm using myself and this particular subject matter as an example of look at what I was able to then begin to identify and discern. Until I learned about narcissism, I wasn't able to look at my mom and dad and say absolutely, and then recognize completely what it was I was dealing with. No, I thought my mom was just moody sometimes, and she was kind of a bitch, and you had to catch her on the right day for this, that, or the other thing. No, then once I understood narcissism and I looked back at who the fuck she was, how she behaved, how she responded, how she reacted, how she treated me, I'm like, oh my God, she was a classic fucking narcissist. Then I was able to correlate that to my own father. He just unfolded in a different way, but since I had the foundation of knowledge, I was able to connect the fucking dots and be like, holy shit, I didn't anticipate this. Meaning being able to all of a sudden recognize this. It's just once I had that level of knowledge in my mind, then I started looking at and analyzing, and all of a sudden I was able to discern, identify, recognize. That all came from the work that I did to obtain the foundations of knowledge. You see what I'm saying? And there's other things in this world. Look at what politics does. Look at the mind war out there. Look at the war for your perception, for your beliefs. Look at how evil they are. Do you not think that you need to be able to as accurately and as quickly as possible discern who people are, what their intentions are, and other such things? Yeah, you might reasonably deduce or conclude that it's probably a pretty critical skill or ability. Well, you better start to cracking some fucking books. You better get to undertaking courses of study that give you foundations of knowledge that will be useful to you in identifying things that maybe now you currently cannot. And here's the thing. If you're one of those people that can see when shown, let's say you didn't know. Somebody, like for instance, in this, I'm pointing it out, I'm explaining it, and you put the dots together and you're like, right, that makes sense. If I don't have the foundation of knowledge, all this can go on in front of my face and I won't know what the fuck I'm seeing, really. I will have nothing more than an opinion through which to interpret what it is that I'm seeing. If I even have that. It's not until I have the foundation of knowledge that I will then begin to understand what I'm seeing. Does that make sense? I mean, you can go through an experience and see, perceive, and experience it in one way, whatever that experience is. After it's over, go and educate yourself to 2 or 3 things that you weren't educated to prior to that experience, and then think back on it, or go and experience it again. And I guarantee you'll see, experience, and feel vastly different things about the experience because you're interpreting it and seeing it through a vastly different lens of perception and understanding that knowledge gave you, that you worked for. You see what I mean? Now, another element of discernment that a lot of us discount, where it can provide some supplemental discernment capabilities for us sometimes when and where we may lack the knowledge. Yeah, it's called your gut. Sometimes your heart can tell you. And if we're not listening to these components of ourselves, and we don't have the knowledge, we're fucked. We're going to be so easily deceived. And people in that context could easily fit the category of very naive. And it's generally pretty easy to manipulate and to deceive the naive. I've been there. I've seen it. I get it. If this understanding doesn't motivate you to want to spend time learning and feeding your mind and building or pouring in, excuse me, your own foundations of knowledge, I don't know what will. Because discernment, three things I would say. Discernment comes from knowledge, experience, which gives you knowledge through you, but there's certain knowledge that you couldn't possess without having the experience that gave you the knowledge. You see what I'm saying? A combination of those two. So for me, I had a lot of experience with narcissists. I just didn't recognize what I was dealing with. Once I obtained the foundation of knowledge and looked back on those experiences, it was like, oh, that's what that shit was. And you can overlay that to just about any subject matter, that once you spend a sufficient time educating yourself to the thing, you will then be able to look back on it, for instance, certain experiences that contain the thing, and see what you didn't see before. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. It should make sense. If it doesn't make sense to you, you've found a channel that is at a level that's above where you are, and you need to come back in a couple of years when you've gone up a couple more steps. Religion and the Jews and the fucking people that are fucking mind controlled by the fucking religion, by the beliefs, to convince people that in order to discern, you pray to God or Jesus. And I have to say it in a mocking way, because it's all a lie. It's all a fucking joke. Just like the Jesus story is all a lie. It's all a joke, where they've taken something and twisted it and then presented it to you as fucking truth. You are here and you have to decipher and discern the fucking truth for yourself. Because everything here just about seeks to fucking deceive you. So in the spirit of that, if that does not compel you or motivate you to spend the time putting the bong and the video games down and reading or listening to people who are giving lectures that you know more than you about whatever it is you want to learn about, to build yourself a foundation of knowledge, then you're going to be an ignorant or a naive fucking fool that's going to be easily deceivable, easily led, because you don't have the foundation of knowledge that gives you the ability to make the decisions, the proper decisions for yourself. Look at how profoundly they're trying to deceive us through the media, the governments, the medical, all. If you don't have a foundation of knowledge, well, you're going to have no other choice but to believe or trust your government or the authorities. You spend the time learning, you kind of know. Well, I started figuring out about things like thimerosal and what they were putting in, vaccinations and shit back in like 07, 08. And from that point on, I was like, I'll never let these motherfuckers put another thing in my body again. And haven't. And that, because I had that foundation of knowledge, I've never taken another flu shot, but with that foundation of knowledge about what thimerosal and that other one, I can't remember the name of it, that's aluminum-based, these adjuvants that are causing and inducing fucking autism in the neurodivergent spectrum of damage to the cognitive functions of people. I knew that then. So when the whole fucking corona hoax happened and they came out with these fucking mRNA shots, I already knew. There's no fucking way you'll put that in my body while I still have a pulse. No fucking way you will put that shit in my body, because I fucking had the foundation of knowledge. Now my brother, he didn't. My father, he didn't. And since they were led by, the government and what they said on TV, look at the choices they made. I had the foundation of knowledge. And then I went out of my way to tell my father, don't get the shots. They're killing people. I went out of my way to tell my brother, don't get the shots. Don't let your kids get the shots. They're killing people. They're doing this. They're doing that. And never did. They had a belief in their government. They had a trust in what they were hearing coming off the news. They had a trust rather than knowledge. And they would have rather believed their government rather than their family, rather than their blood, who had actually, and they didn't know this or they didn't trust it, had actually taken the time to work for foundations of knowledge that these dumb animals didn't work for. And they'd rather trust and believe their fucking wretched, rancid government because they don't even see them as that, because they don't even have those foundations of knowledge to understand that. They damn sure couldn't or wouldn't trust their own fucking blood. Wow. And you got to ask yourself, I've asked myself, what it was that I did that would have made it so they didn't believe me. And then interestingly enough, my father just proudly, boldly, and arrogantly, like that prick, why should I believe you? And he's the one that has his head cut open after he gets the shots, has some colon, I think, removed after the shots. I might be wrong with the colon and the after. That might have happened before. But I'm positive the head cutting open thing happened. Who the fuck knows what's happened to my brother? Who the fuck knows what's happened to his children or his wife? Who the fuck knows if these turbo cancers... Now, since I so boldly and fucking in their faces told them not to do it, you think they're going to let me know if they get turbo cancers, if the kids get turbo cancers, or somehow or otherwise fucked up in a way that they weren't a couple of years ago? You think they're going to let me know and tell me, oh, wait a minute, Keith, you were right. We didn't listen to you. And no, it's not about ego. It's about blood. It's about family. It's about bonds. It's about integrity. It's about, I can't believe I come from that side. I just can't believe that. Is it genetic? Am I just smarter and they're dumber because of blah, blah, blah? No, I don't think so. We're made of largely the same stuff, me and my old man and my brothers and stuff. And well, look what they did versus look what I did. I'll bet you $1 bill it was those foundations of knowledge that I'd worked for that gave me the ability to make the proper choice and recognize and interpret what was actually going the fuck on. And since my brother was a fucking good little animal with his head down, constantly get up, go to work, pay your bills, pay your taxes, raise your kids, he never had time to learn anything. So he had to depend on his fucking beliefs rather than his knowledge. And he believed X, Y, Z. And, okay, you get what you get. But hey, he got rich for it. So at least he'll be rich as he is on the expedited path to his own fucking demise, effectively. That's generally the way it seems to work. However, I have an interesting bloodline. My grandfather on my dad's side, back in the 60s, I think, 70s and 80s, through those years, had like 4 open heart surgeries. 4. And that motherfucking old man lived to be 88 years old. So we don't like to die. We don't like to die. My old man had his head cut open, had part of his colon cut out or something. I think he's still kicking. I don't know. Both my brother and my father both changed their numbers because I'm such a meanie that wouldn't leave them alone. Really? What maggots? And I guess they get what they deserve, or what reality says you have coming to you for making those choices. It's just the way it is. It's just the way it is. And there's so much pride and ego and resentment and envy over there that if they would ever recognize, wow, Keith was telling us the truth from the beginning. He was telling us that it was a hoax from the beginning. We didn't believe him. He was telling us not to get the shots because they were killing people. We didn't believe him. He was right the whole time. He's our blood. He's our family. He was looking out for and we just shit all over him. Gee, what a wonderful world. Such wonderful, loyal family blood. How thick blood is. No, not in my fucking family. Blood is thin like water. Loyalty is shit. Fucking family values are shit. First principles are shit. Ethics and morals are fucking shit. All for one for all. And take care of the narcissistic father figure. Fucking dumb animals. Since they couldn't properly discern, since they didn't have the foundations of knowledge, they suffered the consequences of their ignorance and the choices that were driven or manifested from that ignorance. And as far as I'm concerned, the belief they had in lieu of knowledge that they should have possessed was ignorance, because there were lies all through what they believed. Thusly, they took the shots. Thusly, my father had his head cut open and is still too stupid to realize it. Like, I cannot believe the mental gymnastics I watched the man that shot me out make, the gymnastics that he made to justify the fact that he had his head cut open because he got hit by a wave at the New Jersey shore. I struggle to understand how I come from something that logics and reasons like that. I don't understand. I don't understand. It doesn't make any sense. Am I just smarter and they're dumb? No, I don't think so. I come from that. So they probably didn't have the foundations of knowledge. And then since they were so fucking ego-driven, pride-filled fucking buffoons, they were so convinced of what they believed. And look at the fate they suffered. At least my brother managed to get himself rich off the back of the corona hoax. At least he was able to make himself a cool 20 million. So in a weird sort of way, or a very legitimate sort of way, very direct and in your fucking face kind of way, discernment can be a life and death thing. Now, can't it?
This world is not what you think it is. This world is not what you think it is. This world is not what you think it is. This world is not what you think it is. This world is not what you think it is. This world is not what you think it is.